Hello, and welcome back to another video on this channel. Today it's Sunday, so like always, I'm going to be doing another debate review. And this debate review is special because you guys asked me to do this video and I am bringing it to you. And you might be wondering, well, how did you guys ask me to do this video? Well, the reason is because you guys joined, or some of you guys joined my Discord server and requested me to make this video. And this is a quick plug for my Discord server, but if you want to discuss philosophy with me, reach out to me, give me feedback, or request videos, or anything of that sort, make sure you join the Discord server, which is in the link below. And like always, before I get into this video, I'd like to remind you that if you enjoyed this video, enjoy the content, or enjoy me discussing Dostoevsky, philosophy of religion, anything like that, make sure you like and subscribe, join the community on this channel. It means a lot to me and it's completely free and will help the channel grow. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So, well, you might be wondering, why am I wearing full Chelsea kit even though we just lost 1-0 to, or we actually didn't lose, we drew 1-1 to Southampton? And, well, the answer is actually quite simple. It's because the debate that I'm reviewing, or the discussion I'm reviewing today, is on a channel called Majesty of Reason, led by Joe Schmidt, an extremely nice guy. But then, well, you might be wondering, well, where does that tie into anything? Well, the answer is because he's an Arsenal fan. It's absolutely horrible. You'll think someone who's that nice probably shouldn't support Arsenal, but, you know, whatever. That's his preference. But obviously, I think there is something actually, it should be subjectively wrong with supporting Arsenal. But, you know, there's some problems with anyone who supports Arsenal, but he's a nice guy, seems absolutely great. Without further ado, of course, that's football banter, and I'm sure most of you, since most of you are American, probably don't care too much about what goes on between Arsenal and Chelsea. So, without further ado, I will get into the content of this video. And the debate I'm reviewing is, if I haven't told you already, is between Rob Koons and Graham Oppy, who I'll refer to from now on as Koons and Oppy, which will be more simple. And as a result of that, I'll just get into the video. I'll discuss the video, discuss the content, see how the debate was, give my personal thoughts on it. Of course, the personal thoughts will be more minimal because I want to cover what's actually happened in the debate the most. And, well, we'll see how it goes. So, essentially, I'm not going to be covering this debate in a chronological way. As normal, I don't cover debates in a chronological way. Rather, I follow the arguments or the approach of the different debaters or discussion, the interlocutors, and we'll say, okay, this is the arguments they raise, and then here are the responses, and then here's a counter response, and that, and that, and that, and that kind of how I go through the debate. And as you might notice, I'm not holding my notes with me, and that's because the printer absolutely broke down. And, well, that was a bit of a disaster because now I have to do everything off by my memory. But, oh well, whatever. I hopefully will be able to bring you all the details. I'm not going to give you any misinformation, but of course, I might not go into the full depth of it. So, well, essentially what I'm trying to say is, well, if you're interested in my full notes, I'll put that on my blog on WordPress called Apologetics. For all the link for that, my notes would be in the description below, so don't you worry about that. So let's start off with Oppy's discussion and Oppy's starting statement. Of course, Koons actually starts it, but I think it's better and more beneficial to start off with Oppy's one because it's more simple. So Oppy, like usual, just decides to present his comparison or his theory. He compares his worldview or his ideas with Robert Koons' worldview, and he basically says, well, okay, let's first agree on that there is a necessary being, although it's possible in really rare that there is indeed a contingent explanation or infinite regress. The best explanation is a necessary being. So there is indeed agreement there, which is obviously very important and very good to see. But then where the discussion starts to lie a bit more, but of course this is not a defeat or a complete argument against Rob Koons' argument. He's just saying, well, how should we know what the initial state of reality is? He's like, well, perhaps the initial state of reality is a quantum realm, or perhaps the initial state of reality is this infinite plane, or the initial state of reality isn't very clear to us, right? We do not know enough about the initial state of reality to provide any decisive comments. And well, the response to this is that Koons says, well, of course, we might not know exactly definitively what exactly happened in the initial state of reality, but we do have intellectual insight into modality, which would allow us to discuss the nature of modality or the nature of the initial state of reality more in more detail than what Oppy is trying to present. Because perhaps And these are things like the PSR, which we will discuss in a later part of this video, but essentially saying that we do know enough about the initial state of reality to make some starting and some insightful comments into it, which would help us know or point towards the existence of God instead of some random natural explanation. So they kind of discuss this a bit, but I think the most interesting thing here, and some of it, of course, this is though the entire thing is very interesting, but I think what is most important for you to note as people just watching or wanting to know a bit about this discussion is the idea of the theoretical cost, or the possibility of possible worlds in a hypothesis where God is the creator and where the initial state of reality is the creator. And okay, I'm completely boiling here, but whatever, I'll finish this video before I do anything about it. I shouldn't sweat myself to death, so that should be all fine. So essentially what Oppy is trying to say, like usual, is to say, well, okay, assume the universe is the initial state of the universe is necessary. That explanation is more simple than an explanation where God is the necessary grounding for the universe. And the way he approaches this is, well, those worlds, or the theory which includes the more possible worlds, is more complex than the theory which, or the idea which includes less possible worlds. And what I mean by that is, well, let's look at this idea. Imagine universe A, which is necessary. That universe A may have indeterminate causation and hence multiple possible worlds stemming from that universe A. And now assume that every possible world, since universe A is necessary, must have universe A as a start, and hence the possible worlds branching off from universe A would be the same. There's a limit to the amount of possible worlds defined to that initial state of reality which is necessary. There could only be so many possible worlds which branch, indeterminate possible worlds which branch off it. However, if you have God, on the other hand, as the necessary state of being, perhaps God could create multiple universes which all have their individual ideas. So not only do you have one universe, which is a grounding for all the possible which stem off, you have God, which then produces multiple universes, from which those multiple universes have multiple things to stem off. So as you can see, instead of having one universe with possible worlds that stem off, you have multiple universes with possible worlds stemming off here. So you can suggest that, well, perhaps the one with God as the initial state of reality is more complex or less simple than the explanation as the universe being the fundamental state of reality, or the necessary state of reality. And well, my response to that would be, perhaps, and I think that the only response to this, or well, what, and in response to this, in response to this, Oppy Koons argues that, of course, maybe more possible worlds is indeed theoretically, has a higher theoretical price tag, or a higher theoretical commitment. But you could say that God's creation can be seen as indeterminate, just like Oppy's initial state of reality, which is necessary. And they don't go too far in depth here, but let me just give a few thoughts about this. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's too big of a discussion or too big of a part of this debate. But essentially what I want to say is that perhaps assume that the number of possible worlds which stem off from every universe is Aleph null. And for those who have heard or understood a bit of my Aleph null series, or my infinity series, you would realize that if every single universe, all of their possibility, or all of their possible worlds of each universe is Aleph null, then it follows, since there would be no larger cardinal of the Aleph null, because unless, of course, there is one possible, unless a universe has Aleph 1 or something like that, if assuming that every possible world is indeed Aleph null, or every universe has an Aleph null possible worlds, then it follows that the entirety of all possible worlds which stem from God would also be Aleph null, and hence there would not be any mathematical difference between the aggregate of possible worlds on Oppy's view and Koons' view. But that goes a bit off the topic, so without further ado, let's just go back to the discussion and go to Rob's opening. Rob's opening basically starts with 3 parts. He says, well, there's 3 ways we could approach this issue. Necessary being to God, we have uncaused first cause, because the first cause by nature is uncaused, and finally we have a strong version of the PSR which suggests that all things which are natural has a cause, from which it follows that since the first cause is not cause, it follows that the first cause is supernatural. So they start off with the necessary being to God. This is the most common form, or the most common method that theists like to use. And he basically says that you need to do the most footwork in this part. That's just basically like this part is the most complex one, or the most difficult one. And here, once again, we see Oppy's arguing about what is the fundamental nature of reality. Or in other words, well, what's the fundamental nature of necessity? On Koons' side, Koons is saying that, well, you can have fundamental necessary explanations for necessary ideas, which has a better explanatory scope. Or on Oppy's side, you have, well, necessary beings being necessary due to their necessity. So you have, or maybe another formulation of this would be, well, Koons says that while there are multiple necessary truths, there are more fundamental necessary truths which ground or explain further, which ground above necessary truth or explain other necessary truths. However, on Oppy's view, you just have necessary truths and that's it. And Oppy would say that, well, his view is more parsimonious because you then don't have necessary truths explaining other necessary truths. You just have necessary truths being necessary because of their intrinsic nature. And well, in response to this, well, Koons suggests that perhaps, or Koons raises the analogy of mathematics. You have the fundamental necessary truths of the piano axiom, or the set theory axioms, this axiomatic approach to mathematics, but then you also have the necessary truths of the maths, which go above these axioms. For example, 1 + 1 = 2 is necessary, and also the axioms of the piano axioms are also necessary as well. So you have the piano axioms explaining the 1 + 1 = 2. And then, however, Oppy says that this is a logical consequence, and not actually an explanation. And of course, as you can see, this goes into the definition of what does necessary truth mean, because, or I should say, it goes into the definition of what explanation means, because if you define explanation as a logical consequence, then, well, yes, one of them would be an explanation of another. But what I think, and actually I'll be quite sympathetic, or I find myself leaning towards Oppy's view of it, is that I believe that instead of being an explanation, they're just kind of like there's a kind of tautological relationship, or actually in the weaker sense, perhaps there is kind of a biconditional relationship between the axioms and the math. And what I mean by that is, well, 1 + 1 = 2, if and only if piano axioms are true. And what I mean by that is, well, they are, in some sense, just saying exactly the same things, like how bachelors are unmarried men. The 1 + 1 = 2 is a logical consequence from the piano's axioms, and the piano axioms is a logical consequence from the 1 + 1 = 2. Like they are basically, they're actually almost the same thing, or they are the same thing in the sense that mathematics are indeed the axioms. The axioms are the mathematics, and what we just see is the expression of these mathematics. It's the axioms are the abstraction, and the mathematics is its expression. So here we actually have, and I do believe, or I do agree with Oppy in the sense that, in his response to Koons, in the sense that these are logical consequences, or these are not explanations, they're just kind of equivalents, or they're just saying they're just kind of saying the same thing, and I do agree with Oppy in that. And here, in response to this, I would like to raise my new view, or my own view, about how perhaps, if we're going to judge things by simplicity, perhaps there's another way to approach it instead of Koons' way of saying that, well, there's a structure, or almost a hierarchy of necessary truths that explain each other. Perhaps you can say, well, perhaps you have God as a necessary being. God is the only necessary being. You have less commitments to necessary propositions. You only have one necessary being, from which all these necessary truths are logical consequences from. And what I mean by that is, instead of 1 + 1 = 2 is a result of the piano axioms, that's a necessary truth, and then 1 + 1 = 2 is also a necessary truth, and then some other axiom or some other idea is also necessary. All these things are necessary. What I could say is that, well, all of these are just logical consequences from the mind of God, in the sense that, well, perhaps the axioms, the numbers, the mathematics, using as an example, would all be an explanation, or would all be a result of having some essence or some status in the mind of God, which grounds these truths and makes these necessary truths logical consequences instead of an explanation. So instead of having or opening yourself up to a variety of necessary truths, you accept the necessary truth of God's existence, and from him would stem all these other ideas or all these so-called necessary truths. And since God is necessary in all possible worlds, that means the truths or the things grounded in God will also be true in all possible worlds. And since the grounding is in God, you then will have one necessary being, which then is a fundamental part or explanation for all these other concepts, which while intrinsically they might not be necessary, they are indeed necessary due to the grounding being necessary as well. So I think that this might be a more simple way, in the sense that you are committed to less necessary truths. And if you want me to explain this more, I do understand that I have not explained this in the best possible way. I am indeed trying to get this as short and as simple as possible, so I'm not going too far in depth into this. This is just my thoughts, and my thoughts aren't the main part of this debate, but essentially that is kind of my thoughts. If you want to know more about that, make sure you drop it in the comments below, or reach out to me on the Discord server, as I've said before. So the next important thing, or the next interesting thing that I think they talk about, is the idea of, well, how does an uncausable being get to God? And that is the idea of Koons' strong PSR. And Koons' argument from the PSR basically suggests that, well, unless you hold to the idea that all things that are natural have a cause, then you're confronted with this serious problem of skepticism. And what I mean by that is, well, you start off with an idea that it's possible for natural things to be necessary. Then what do you have? There's a possibility that right now, our state of affairs right now is the necessary state of affairs, and all things previous to us are indeed illusions. We were created right now as a necessary state of affairs, and our causal understanding of the past were not actually necessary because, well, you can imagine a necessary state of affairs just splitting or cutting off everything, and our idea that we actually did have some causal relationship or causal action in the past would actually be false, and we'll have a defeater for our epistemology or our knowledge, because right now the PSR, or right now it seems that our current state of affairs, or our current state of affairs, if necessary, then, well, we wouldn't be able to understand or wouldn't be able to trust our causal knowledge, and we are once again confronted with the problem of skepticism. And, well, I think that this is a very powerful argument because, well, the only way to respond to that, as Koons notes, is to say that perhaps it's to say that it's to find an a priori knowledge that natural things could be necessary, but then that's quite difficult, or we can't use, or we have to have some a priori knowledge to know that our current state of affairs is not necessary. But the only way to do that would seem to accept Koons' PSR that all things natural do have explanations, because if all things natural are not necessary and need explanations, then it follows that right now is not the necessary one, because right now we are in a natural situation. So it does seem that now it seems that indeed Koons' PSR, this formulation of the PSR, seems to be quite powerful. And of course, if you want me to talk more about this form of the PSR, make sure you let me know in the comments. I'll discuss this in more detail, but I hope that is a sufficient understanding. So now Joe Schmidt, he raises a few ideas, and I do really I just want to say once again that I do really appreciate his work, and also how he's interacting with the two philosophers, because he does raise really insightful things, and he's perhaps one of the smartest guys out there on internet YouTube. So make sure you go check him out if you haven't already. He's agnostic right now, but I think he's really smart. And of course, I'm not saying he's agnostic, so he's not smart. I'm not implying anything like that at all, but I'm just saying, well, he's a really great guy. You should go check him out, check his channel out. He's a really nice guy. So you should go with the PSR, perhaps you can go with the PSR, which is not restricted to natural facts, but contingent facts, in the sense that, well, perhaps instead of saying, well, all things that are natural have a cause, you could say, well, all things that are contingent has a cause. And, well, it seems that all things that we experience are contingent, and we have fleeting moments, and we all seem to be very much contingent. And I think a response to this would be, and Koons does say that as well, here Joe sneaks in the fact that things are so fleeting, and that is indeed based on the assumption that we do have empirical knowledge. Instead of basing this on an a priori knowledge, you're basing this on empirical knowledge, which would be begging the question, because what we do see here is that, well, even if it feels like it's contingent, we're only contingent because it's based on empirical evidence or empirical feelings about the past, the present, and also the future, or some intuition into the future. But if it's possible that the present is necessary, then all our feelings from the future, or no, all our feelings from the past will then not be grounded or not warranted, or we can't use that to then ground or support the fact that we're currently contingent or not necessary. Instead, there is no defeater to the idea that we're right now necessary. So, Joe, then I'm getting a really dry throat right now, and I don't have water near me. I'm sorry for that. But essentially, perhaps, and this is what Joe raises, and he's basically saying, well, why can't you have perhaps the idea that, let's take it to the extreme, perhaps we are indeed a supernatural being, which is tricking ourselves to have, or we are indeed a necessary being, which is tricking ourselves to have finite thoughts. So what he's saying is that, well, it doesn't seem incoherent to think that I'm a supernatural being who makes himself feel like a natural being. So right now we are actually a supernatural being, which would then suggest that we either need an explanation or it just seems to defeat the argument that all things that are natural have a cause, and that all impositions or all the knowledge or the a priori ideas about things being finite have a cause, and all these things are actually just a result of our brain tricking ourselves as a supernatural being. And then in response to this, Koons says that this idea is irrelevant because the real problem is whether my present sense data has a cause, and those seem natural. And even if God created or we tricked ourselves to have finite things, those finite things would be natural, or those things would be finite, and hence would also require a cause. So then it doesn't escape the argument that Koons is presenting. But then, of course, Joe just goes around and responding, well, perhaps, of course, it doesn't seem impossible for a God to do that. And well, perhaps, or I'm just going to raise my own thoughts on that, is, well, perhaps there is, or perhaps it is modally impossible for God to deceive himself. So the idea of God tricking himself to appear finite or think the world is finite is actually impossible. It's impossible for God to deceive himself. And to illustrate this, you might raise the idea of, well, can God commit suicide? And that might sound very dark, but bear with me for a minute, because one cannot destroy the indestructible, because God by nature cannot kill himself because he's omnipotent, omnipresent, and things like that. So God killing himself would be logically impossible. And in the same way, perhaps because God is good, or God by nature is good, it will be impossible for him to deceive himself, because by making himself appear or think the things as finite, that will be deceiving himself, and deceiving yourself is perhaps morally evil. And since that thing is morally evil and God is good, it is logically impossible for God to do it. So God actually cannot defeat himself. So essentially, that, I think, that kind of covers or responds to Joe's ideas. If you think my response is wrong or anything, or like that, just make sure you let me know in the comments below. I'll try to interact with it more. I personally haven't thought too much about it, but I think it is a reasonable response to the argument. And then they go back to Oppy's response to Koons and see whether Koons or Oppy has a good response to that. And well, Oppy just seems to just repeat the idea that, well, it just seems so evident or so intuitive that right now is not the necessary state of affairs, or is not the initial state of reality, because, well, it seems that there are indeed things in the past. But then once again, as Koons points out quite quickly, well, that isn't really defeating the argument, because that just begs the question, because, well, you could just raise the same question, well, why can't this be the initial state of reality, and all these other ideas were just imposed, or you came into existence with these past senses or these past knowledges. So with that in mind, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I've gone through it quite quickly. The video is around 25 minutes long, so I haven't gone through it too quickly, but I think that's the fastest I could have gone through it. There's a lot of things which I haven't discussed in this video, which is in the debate. So make sure, if you're interested in this, or you think that what I've discussed is insufficient, or you want to learn more about what I've discussed, make sure you go check out the actual debate video. I know this is quite short. I know that this is insufficient, but unfortunately that's kind of the sense, or the best I could do with these reviews. I don't want to make them too long, because if I make them too long, then you may as well just go watch the debate yourself. So, well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Once again, if you want to reach out and ask for more debate reviews, make sure you go check it out, or just check out my Discord server where you can just ask for video requests. And above that, or beyond that, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel so you're updated whenever I make a new video I make. Also, I just want to make a quick reminder for you, and I know I'm going on quite a lot in this admin section, but essentially, I'm going to be having a live stream with someone in UK, Dr. Richard Playford, to talk about natural moral law and Nietzsche, and he's coming on at 8 p.m. at Hong Kong time, which is noon in UK time, and also 7 a.m. EST, so that would be up for you if you're interested in that. It's a live stream, so you can ask questions about natural moral law. I'll be discussing things like natural moral law, Nietzsche, divine command theory, and things like that. So if you're interested in this live stream, make sure you like and subscribe, or just set an alarm or something so you know when to come on to watch the video or watch the stream, and also ask questions at the end. There'll probably be around 15 minutes at the end to ask questions. So I've also, and of course I have to do this admin quite a lot, and since I've just published a book, make sure you go check that out. It's on Amazon. I'll put the link to that book in the description below. There's a Kindle version and also a paperback version. I'll put both of them in the links below. So with that out of the way, all this admin stuff out of the way, I know it could get a bit boring. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe. Have a great one. Like always, God bless, stay safe, goodbye. And also, check out Joe Schmidt's channel. It's a really great channel. He's a great guy. If you're watching this, Joe, I'll love to catch up to you. Love to talk to you about philosophy, things like that. Just let me know. And also, we can have a grand old debate on whether Arsenal is better than Chelsea. And, well, we'll see how that goes. So if you're watching this, Joe, have a great one. Stay safe. And to all of you as well, just have a great one. Stay safe. Have fun with your families. God bless. I hope to see you soon in the next video. Hope to see you tomorrow night. God bless and goodbye. See you soon.